Bierton strict and particular Baptists. This is an introduction outlining the case against the Association of Grace Baptist Churches Limited. This document will demonstrate and serve to prove that the Association of Grace Baptist Churches Limited acted wrongly in its dealings with the closure and sale of the Bierton Strict Baptist Chapel between the period 2003 and 2006, and to request the Association of Grace Baptist Churches to correct their error. The first thing that is presented is 1. David Clark remains the sole active member of the Bierton Strict and Particular Baptist Church and a sent minister of the church since 1982, and continues his calling as a sent minister from the Bierton Strict and Particular Baptist Church at home and abroad to this day. 2. That the Bierton Church was a Gospel Standard cause since the 16th of January 1981 and governed by its rules of conduct. 3. That the Bierton Church failed in its duty and responsibility to preserve and maintain the doctrines of grace, in particular the doctrine of particular redemption, that is clearly taught and set out in the trust deed and articles of religion. 4. That David Clark acted honourably and rightly and in conscience by his withdrawal from the communion of the church, because the church did not seek to preserve and maintain the doctrine of particular redemption by preventing one of its sent male members and trustee from advocating and promoting general redemption, this being and contrary to the articles of religion and the terms set out in the trust deed of the Bierton Church 1831. 5. That David Clark remained an honourable member of the Bierton Church, as the church did not terminate his membership as they wanted him to return, and so had no lawful grounds to terminate his membership. 6. The Bierton Church was at fault and the cause of the problem, because the church was unfaithful, exercising its responsibility in preserving the doctrine of particular redemption, for which they were duty-bound to do, in the same way that a woman whose husband is caught in adultery has every just ground to withdraw from the marriage bed. It was the Bierton Church who was at fault, being unfaithful to its cause and articles of religion, and not David Clark. The church had no grounds to terminate his membership and remains an honourable member to this day. 7. That the Bierton Church held to the traditional rules relating to church membership and termination of membership, meaning only the church can terminate one's membership when is either an honourable or dishonourable member of the church, as specified in the Gospel Standard Rules of Conduct. 8. That despite David Clark's attempt to resolve this matter with the association in 2003, his representations were wrongly rejected and the association went ahead and registered the chapel in their name by misappropriation with the land registry and sold the chapel. That the memorandum of the choice of new trustees, signed and dated by David Whitemarsh, the association secretary, dated the 5th of February 2003, was unlawful. This was because the association were not elected by the church to be its trustees. The trust deed and indenture of the Bierton Church requires that church members elect any new trustees, and neither David Clark or Irene Clark, now Holloway, being honourable church members, were notified of the election of new trustees in December 2003. They were not notified of any attempt to elect new trustees or to sell the chapel, despite Mr. Janes, a senior trustee, knowing the whereabouts and circumstances of their absence, as Mr. Clark was on mission work in the Philippines, even though Mr. Janes had been in recent communication with Mr. Clark in the Philippines, but was not notified of the closure of the chapel. 9. It was the responsibility of the lawful trustees to ensure that the Bierton Church continue faithfully in their articles of religion, and that the chapel used for that purpose in their worship of God. The lawful trustees were fully informed of the secession of David and Irene Clark, as the whole matter was related to them, as published in the book the Bierton Crisis 1984 and circulated to all those concerned, including the lawful trustees, as listed in the circulation list. It is requested that the Board of Trustees of the Association of Grace Baptist Limited, after giving due consideration and studying the evidence set before it, meet with David Clark and all concerned to rectify and correct any errors made in the past and put forward a suggestion how this matter may be resolved in an honourable Christian way for the sake of the glory of God and the cause of the Lord Jesus Christ. Also to correct the historic record relating to the closure of the Bierton Chapel, something that Miss Bertha Ellis, one of the senior deceased members, would have liked to have happened, and with a view to prevent any further action that may be required.